Welcome to the Daily Edge. Steve, Mark, we are the father-son Noodleberg duo, and we are ready to find our edge. And today we are going to be talking about the career arc and how to manage your mindset through the stages of your career.
Sounds like a good conversation.
Let's find our edge. That starts with the affirmation. Every stage of my career has a purpose. I honor where I am, stay curious, and trust that each step is shaping the next level of me. So you sent me we got a good article this morning.
Let's get to Genesis, you know. So a lot of our conversations start from just being aware.
Yep.
You know, I think they call it social listening.
Sure.
But I'm listening to what other people are putting out there. I get a lot of inputs, which create my outputs. Yep. This was a good one. It specifically spoke about coaching.
The coaching stages.
Right, in sports.
Yeah.
And the stages that they have to go through. And it seemed very obvious to me. So my question in sending it to you was, how does this align with, you know, sales or leadership career?
Well, it was interesting because they talked about 5 stages, and the first and the second stage were very similar to the fourth and the fifth stage, which had a lot to do with like ego and anger. And I do think that resonates, right? Like, I remember vividly being in that first stage of wanting my shot, feeling like I knew what I needed to do and feeling like all I needed to do was have somebody give me an opportunity and I could excel with it. And it's really easy to get impatient in that stage. It's really easy to get bitter. It's really easy to feel entitled. It's really easy to derail your career early in that first stage.
Well, if you're an asshole, you know, if you're just so hell bent on, you know, getting that shot and not, you forget what you're supposed to do in the meantime. You got to keep doing it. But what I liked was, and just going back a bit, the first one was creating your name.
Right.
You absolutely have to invest the time and the energy, and this is where I think the learning, there's no other, you have to have experience. You have to do it in building your name.
Which is really interesting for a sales role. Yeah. Right? Because I think as young people starting their career, it's similar to young coaches starting their career. It's not really going to be about the results for you. It's really going to be about the way you put in the daily behaviors, the way you create value in spaces that people aren't really paying attention to, the way you put in the work for, call it the first year of the job.
Or longer.
Longer in coaching, right? For me, it took forever.
I think it's the same
for
in
me,
sales.
It was so long.
If you're not doing the work, you can't build confidence. And I think that's where people go awry. They think they're at a higher stage than they really are.
And I think really in that first stage of your career, you got to focus on we never focus on the results, but particularly in that early part, you got to figure out what your niche is, what the value you can provide, how you're going to show up in those intangibles. Like I actually just heard, and this is a really, really, really unique thing to talk about because Spoelstra was talking about Khalil Ware early in his career and said he's got to focus on his professionalism. It's not a basketball problem for him. It's his ability to be consistent. It's the daily behaviors. It's what he's doing, which everybody early in their career, the quicker you can get to that as your focus of I'm going to be consistent and I'm going to care. Right? I'll just try hard. And if I consistently show up and try hard every day, you're going to surpass so much of the competition earlier in your career, but it's not flashy. And it's not, you got some friends that are making a lot of money really early, or you got some friends that are getting a title really early, and you can get caught up in a lot of the things that will send you astray. I think in that early part of the career, you have to focus on building your name. But what does that really mean? That means consistency and professionalism.
There's there's just no substitute for experience.
Right.
You have to live it. You have to go through it. How could you know what it's like, even from an endurance standpoint, to go through that first year? Or your first year in sales, man, you're going to get hit with a lot of punches that you have to be prepared to go through them in order to, have the backbone to tell somebody else about it.
So it took me basically 8 years to get the first coordinator job at Cincinnati. And then after that first year, first of all, I remember during the year feeling like I was just barely keeping my head above water. Right? Like I was doing everything I could to stay on pace. And I was exhausted at the end of the year. But then when I got a chance to reflect back on it, I was like, oh, okay, right? That's the way it felt. But now I know what I can do in this off season. I know the areas I can get a little bit better to kind of set myself up for success and not feel that way coming out of the first year. There's no way to fake that,
no,
right? There's no way to prepare for that, really. You have to go through it, which I think is that second part of your career where it's like you're gaining the experience. You're building that foundation of experiences that you'll be able to build off of, and there's no other way to do it than to do it, which is like what everybody talks about. Like, oh, I wish you had more experience. I get that still. At 38 years old.
I believe that.
At 38 years old, like, we'd like to hire you.
Teach me?
But we wish that we wish that you had more experience. Or we think you'll be a great fit for this organization when you get a little bit more experience, right? Like, well, the only way to get that experience is to do it. So,
so in business and in sports, they are hiring leaders at a younger age. So there is more opportunity. Why? Because there is an innovation part of it that you're not going to get with somebody who's in the fourth or fifth stage. Oh, that's just the way we do it. What a crock of shit. Right. That's the most expensive words in sales. Oh, that's just the way we've done it. No. You see things differently. One of the reasons why I love working with you is you keep challenging everything that I've done,
right,
which makes it infinitely better for the people who are receiving it, right, because it's tested. And that's where I think a lot of guys get fired.
Well, so there's, they were talking about that stage 4 and 5 of coaches, which I dealt with a lot of those guys who were rooted in their career, and they were like, well, you're not going to take my spot, right? I'm not going to help you. They looked at younger guys as a threat, or they look at the next generation as a threat. You see this in sports.
Oh, and you see this in business as well. You bring somebody who's well touted into the bullpen, and everybody else goes, our job is to bury that person.
Destroy that guy, right? Destroy that person. I'm not giving him the shot.
Tell him all the shit, to fill him full of crap so that he doesn't take my spot, which is
So how did you manage that mindset? And like, because what stage of the career are you in? I mean, like, if we were to label the stages, are you in 4? Are you in 5?
I'm probably in 5. I'm in that stage where I don't have anything to prove anymore,
right,
which is kind of really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I do. I know how to do it. I know that it works. I know that I've spent the time and the energy to modernize it. I think that's really important. And when we take that to sports, there's guys that just didn't modernize it. They got stuck. I was fortunate. I worked with Coach Shula. But listen, dude, it don't work anymore, man.
Right.
You can't yell at guys. You can't, this is different. I mean, there's a different mentality. So for me, I was constantly evolving. I have evolved to a place where, and I hear this all the time, so it's really relevant. Like, man, you're really good on LinkedIn. What happens if LinkedIn goes away? I go, I'd learn whatever the next thing is. I didn't know LinkedIn. It came about. I learned it. Now there's people who, endorse how I do it, and people that don't endorse. There's majority of people still using it like, trash mail, but,
So it's interesting because I think we have that same skill set of lacking fear of the future. Gary Vee talks about it all the time right now with AI. I'm agnostic when it comes to what comes next. He goes, I'm just open to seeing it and then being willing to test it and try it and figure it out once I know that it's a validated thing. You've built that through a career of entrepreneurial failure and success. You've gone through it. I'm assuming, actually. I should ask you the question, I guess.
Yeah.
How did you build that tolerance of ambiguity? How did you build tolerance of what's to come?
So before we get there, I think it's really important that when I watched you build your football career, which you didn't have a family role model. A lot of people get into it. Their dad was in it or their brother was in it.
The majority of people have some family who started.
You didn't, but I'll never forget the amount of reading and development you did. Like you took Bill Walsh, who was an innovator then, and said, how can I learn this and make it my own? So for me, all of my learning was not verbatim. I didn't go, okay, thank you, Tony Robbins, for this, and then I became a Tony Robbins guru. I took little bits and pieces of everybody's and made it my own.
Right.
That is a key thing I think about learning, that when I get to any place in my career, like, what can I learn? What can I learn? What can I learn? So I'm insatiably curious about stuff.
Right.
That's how I learned LinkedIn. I was like, wait a minute, man, I used to do it this way. Right. And I got tired of just having to show up there. So much easier to do it the way we do it, and so much more immediate, no gatekeepers, no all that stuff. So I think my curiosity drove me to be the best I can be, to learn the best. And I think everybody and everything offers you a place to learn. I learned a lot from the sports coaches I worked with, but I don't think many of them could transfer their skill sets to business.
No.
They couldn't.
There's a lot, and I don't know. So then, for sure, now the world we're living in now, it seems like there's this real dynamic between very successful sports people moving into business. Right? They're all looking for seats at the cap table. Yeah. They're all looking to leverage what they're doing in sports.
Because they're preparing for a different stage of their life.
Right. And so I think that really wasn't a thing, particularly with those older coaches that you're talking about, and even really your generation. I think the majority of people who are your age, the mid 60s to late 60s, had a vision for themselves that they would do something that would be the thing that defined them, and when it was over, they would just be done, right? You did not take that path. You've continued to evolve and grow so that you're still relevant and so that you're still learning and growing. But I really think that middle stage, right, where, because they talked about stage 3, where it's I want that fill in the blank name. Right? I need that guy. Not everybody gets there. Not everybody becomes the household name. Not everybody gets to a stage in their career where they almost feel like they're peaking. So I think that article that we talked about really kind of generalized a middle part of the career that is not what everybody experiences.
We talked about somebody specific, I think that worked for the San Antonio Spurs, that never became a head coach.
Right.
But was great at...
It was actually GRM's assistant coach.
Yes.
She's been on...
That's right, that's what it was.
It's his number 2 at UConn.
Right. And that's it.
That is her career forever.
And that's her stage. And she stayed at that stage, was the best at her stage. She's known as that stage, but she never wanted more. I didn't understand that.
Right.
I still don't understand it.
Correct.
For me, I always wanted more.
Same.
That drove me. That drove my behavior. That drove my learning, because I wanted more. Like, I knew I could do this, but what's it like doing that? What's it like doing that? And what's it like really leading and charging? And so because of that, I just knew how to do it.
Yeah.
So I didn't need outside validation. Right. Which is...
Well, there's another component to this that I think is critical for the evolution of the career arc, which is, I'm going to ask you, are you afraid of failure? Are you afraid of failing?
I don't think I've ever really been afraid I think I've been afraid of being average.
Right.
So it was different. It was like, I don't want to fail and know that I could have done something about it.
Right.
So I failed, and I don't care who you are, man. It's not fun to lose.
No.
It's not fun to get punched in the face. And, there were times, and you've lived the time, we were flying private, and we were driving, like...
The ups and the downs of life. I think people are afraid of that. And I think that is one thing...
It didn't define me.
That is one fear that I think people have to get over if they want to move through the career arc. Otherwise, I think you handicap yourself, and I think you put a ceiling on yourself, because if you're not willing to take the risk of experiencing the failure so you avoid the opportunities to do that, there's no more growth. You're stuck.
I think being in charge, being a leader, so call it the head coach or the CEO or
whatever
CRO, you're out there alone.
Right.
And I've said being an entrepreneur is lonely.
Right.
Man, it was like, what if this doesn't work,
right.
man? I got to deal with all of the people who were looking at me.
Right.
And some are looking at me like, wow, I hope you do it. And most of them are looking at like, I hope you don't do it, you asshole. So it's, the elevator goes up and it goes down. You have to have a special mentality to go to those stages.
Right.
But for me, it was the curiosity. I want to know what it's like to make the decision. I didn't want to sit in a room and bet my future on somebody else.
Right.
I'm willing to do what it takes to be at the head, to make that final decision. And listen, I sucked at it in the beginning, which I didn't expect, man. I had been great at everything I've ever done, and I sucked.
I do think that there's like somehow a preconceived notion in our brain that we can't afford to suck the older we get. That somehow the older we get, the less room for failure, or the less room for suck, or the less time that's really there. So that like it even creates more and more barriers. Like I'm fortunate at 32, it was a real question for me. Like, can I really go start over in another industry?
Wow,
like, is it really possible to do that? Because I think all of society would tell you, like, no, you just burned your 20s. That was your time to invest and build. Now is your time that you need to be staying in to continue to reap. That was not my path, but I think I learned that from you.
This is so much fun to do, because like when I'm watching what's happening to Pat Riley now,
right?
Pat Riley transitioned. He took it from average, good player, to a great head coach, to what was a great front office guy,
president,
and he should probably call it a day and say, see you at the park.
Right.
He doesn't know how to stop.
Right.
And that's to a detriment, because he's showing up poorly now.
Right.
When it damages everything he did before. So when we look at stages, there is a natural transition and a natural time to stop.
How do you know? How do you know when that time is?
I think listening to people who have left gracefully, right, is so great. Derek Jeter, when it was time,
right?
He looked at it, did it with the same team, he didn't have to go anywhere else.
I think there was a great visual of it this past week at Wimbledon. Like Novak Djokovic, got blasted by Sinner.
Right.
I mean, blasted. Right? Like, this is one of the greatest tennis players in the history of the game.
And he got out.
And he got ran off the court by this guy, by this younger player, and he knew it going in. But what's interesting is that I don't get any kind of like, ooh, this is a bad look for Novak. Like, he's doing it gracefully. He's emptying the tank for himself, but he's also talking about how hard it is to compete with the younger generation right now. He's also saying that, like, I'm aware that my best might not be the best anymore. So, like, he's in this stage 4 or 5 of his career, which is the tail end, but not doing it with animosity, not doing it angrily, not doing it holding on to, like, his place. He's almost doing it in a transition going, I'm happy to go out however I go out and pass the torch to this new generation.
So there's a common theme, if you're willing to recognize what stage you're in, you're like, okay, where am I in the arc?
Self-awareness.
Lisa Lutoff-Perlo,
Right.
who may be one of the greatest CEOs I've ever met, managed 20,000 employees for all of those years, understanding where she fits, and the recent work we've done together points to where she can continue to add value. Oh my God, was that liberating. So no matter what you do for a living, whether you're a coach or whatever you do, if you can understand, recognize where you still add value, you can't be that top player all the time.
You can't be the head coach if you're not the head coach.
Right.
You can't be the CRO if you're not the CRO. It's not possible.
Well,
so if you can figure out how you can add value,
right.
well, so right. Oh, I mean, this is the edge.
Right.
Like the edge that you just dropped was at every part of your career. You have to figure out. You have to have the self-awareness and the situational understanding to recognize where you can add value, because that is the ultimate key to navigating every stage at a high level.
I will give you a mic drop. In the arc of my career, I was not a great CEO. I was an incredible VP of sales or CRO. That seat should have been somebody else.
Right.
Me in that seat took me away from my greatness.
Right.
What I think I'm great at.
Right.
So had I had the wherewithal to, and I talk about this as the number one skill set, is self-awareness.
Right.
Where the hell are you in this arc?
Right.
But, and you want to have that conversation with me, I'd love to.
Yeah.
Because we have it all the time.
Right.
You have always wanted to be a head coach.
Yep.
And now you are a head coach. It's a different playing field, but you are kicking ass, man.
Thank you. Thank you for finding your edge with us. Remember, have the self-awareness to know where you're at and where you can add value. Comment, like, share, tell us how you find ways to add value every day. We'll see you next time.